Welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom, and I am Geegado Megwan, spirit name, which means talking feather woman. Apparently, my mouth is not working. So, also known as Rollie Allaire, I empower women to stand in their truth so that they feel fulfilled and can achieve all their desires. This week's weekly interview series is to support successful women who feel misunderstood and disempowered in personal relationships and stand in their truth so that they can communicate with confidence. So join me in a Stand in Your Truth call where you'll explore what's blocking you from communicating with confidence in your personal relationships. So this week I'd like to introduce François de Neuville. De Neuville? I hate going from French to English or English to French because then my pronunciation isn't correct. And we will chat about mastering relationships. So drawing on his own experiences as a tsunami survivor, his military training as a commando-paratrooper, and his adventures around the world, François brings a unique perspective and depth of knowledge to his work as a high-performance coach, speaker, and author. He helps entrepreneurs, CEOs, and executives master their relationships, master their time, and create an epic life. So welcome. How are you?
Hi, Rollie. Thanks for having me today.
Not a problem. So French is my first language. However, when I go from English to French, I always do that like struggling with like the pronunciations of trying to get.
I know.
I really can say François properly.
Oh, beautiful.
So welcome. So
Thank
how
you,
are you today?
I'm terrific. Thank you. I'm really
Good.
glad to have this conversation.
Lovely. And so last week we actually got to meet with your wife, so that was amazing. So I really had a beautiful conversation with Rihanna, and I'm glad to see that you're here this morning. And so so one of the things that we often talk about, or that I guess technically we really don't talk about, we don't talk about our relationships. We tend to like just kind of like fluff them off and pretend that they don't exist, or like or we just have some difficulties with being able to like owning up to what it is that's actually going on within relationships, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And like with almost 7-8 billion people on the planet, I mean, it's impossible to not have interaction with one another, right?
Really?
If you're living on during COVID pandemic, maybe a little bit, but in general, we have interaction with people around us. And the quality of your life is directly influenced by the quality of your relationships.
Absolutely. And how we communicate and what we do and how we express ourselves or don't makes a huge impact as to what it is that how we're going to be able to have these interactions, right?
Yeah, definitely. And when I talk about relationship, is really relationship with your loved one, with your kids, with your partner, with your family, with your colleagues, with your boss, or whatever. It doesn't really matter because it all comes kind of to the same basic, right? And over the years, with my wife, we're thinking a lot about how to get better in our relationship. We were really actively working on it, read a lot, trying to do everything we could to get just better every day. And this is kind of what I'm all about: self-mastery, personal mastery, and I really want to grow in there. And that's why we dive deep into this to understand what are the tools that we can use on a daily basis to master relationships. So today I would love to share with you actually two parts. The first part would be distinctions about how to build solid foundations. And the second part would be about how to get good at conflict resolution, right? So the base of every relationship is we need to have a core. We need to have something solid. And then after, when something solid is there, it's easier to navigate the ups and downs, because let's face it, conflicts are happening. Even with the best people, it doesn't matter. It's okay, it's fine. But we need to learn how to navigate them so it doesn't hurt the relationship and it just make everybody grows.
And you're right, like there are so many things, and we are dynamic, and we change and we shift, and our values, our core values typically don't change for most people.
Yeah.
But like things like in terms of our values, our views, our perspectives change as we get older. So the way that I saw things when I was 18 looks so much different now that I'm 53, right?
Yeah.
So like the dynamic or the viewpoints are different as to the things that I valued or thought that were like super important then are different than the way that they are now. And that comes with our relationships as well.
Definitely.
Right? So,
and going from that kind of basic with the value and what you want in life, there is one of my favorite distinction is the difference between contribution and responsibility in each other's happiness. So basically you're the only person responsible for your own happiness. Nobody is there to do that job for you. This is your job, and you cannot delegate that or outsource that to anyone. The problem is that often when we get into a relationship, we're like, I expect the other person to make me happy. I've done that. I was in this long-term relationship, and I was waiting to get happiness from the other person. I realized, well, this is really flawed, because it's super selfish, actually.
Yeah.
You know, most people say, oh, it's selfish to put yourself first. Like, wait a minute. It's not. If you don't put yourself first, then you expect or you want other people to make you happy.
Yeah.
You put the responsibility on them. And this is very selfish, because nobody is responsible for your own happiness. And so for every relationship that you have, if you expect the other person to make you happy, this is not going to work on the long term. You can only contribute to the happiness of the person that you share your life with, or your kids, or whatever it is, right? So I think this is a very powerful distinction to realize. It's not selfish to put myself first. I got to do the things that makes me happy so I can be whole and complete. And I think when two people really thrive in a relationship, because they all come whole and they support each other in their growth. They don't lean on each other trying to get things from the other person to get a smile on their face. No, they are there to support each other in times of hardship and to support each other in their dreams. So this is the difference between responsibility and contribution. You can only contribute to each other's happiness.
And I love that, because one of the things that I often say is that you need to be happy with yourself, and you need to be okay with being with yourself in order for you to be able to be happy with people around you. Because there's a lot of times that I have clients, because there's a lot of codependency in the with the clients that I do work with.
Yeah.
And they build on it, they change and they shift. However, when those initial things is like, yeah, well, I like to do all these things for everybody else. Okay, but when are you doing something for you? When is it that you're going to make sure that you provide your own self-care, that you take time to be able to slow down and relax, that you take time to like just kick back and read a book if you want to, like whatever it is that allows you to be able to like have within yourself. Because if you're always doing for others, then you can't do for yourself, because there's nothing left to do for yourself.
Exactly. The problem is that life happens. It happens fast every day. There are things coming, your responsibilities and stuff. And then sometimes we disconnect from what we really want. And we don't know anymore. We just live day by day. And we disconnect from this grand vision of what we want our life to be like. And this is, I love talking about that with people, going deep into what do you want in life? What makes you happy? And make this happy list and just be very intentional about doing a lot of stuff that are on that list, right? This is very important. And then communicating that with the other person, because communication in that game is kind of everything, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the main issue is that in relationships, and that's going to be my second distinction I want to give you today, there is a difference between an agreement and an expectation. Often we expect things from the other person, but we never agreed upon. And I want to share a short story with my wife, because that was very funny. Actually, not so funny, but when we started our relationship, we were in long distance. So she was living in Spain, I was living in Belgium. And because we were not being together all the time, I was kind of texting a lot. I was calling a lot. I was really wanting her to know that I was thinking about her, that I cared, that I loved her when I was not with her, right? So I would go, for example, to a party with friends, and I would, in the middle of the dinner or the party, I would go out, I would call and say, hey, send a text, etc., just to show that I was thinking about her. When she would go to a party with her friends, I was looking at my phone, waiting like, hope she's thinking about me. Nothing ever. I was so frustrated because I expected her to share that with me. But when we had this long conversation, I realized, well, when she's with her friends, she wants to be truly present with the people that she's with. I mean, being on your phone and text, it's super annoying. Like, whoa, fair enough. I totally agree. I totally understand that. And for me, it was like, oh, that's my way to show love. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't love me if she doesn't do that. And so we realized this expectation was not really working. And so we turned it into an agreement. We said, hey, when you leave, when you come back or whatever, we just set some little rules. And I stopped expecting it. And then I was not hurt when I did not receive anything. She's like, oh, she's spending with her friends. She's giving her full attention to others. What a beautiful soul. That was it. Yeah. Turning those expectations into agreements. And that's valid on the workplace as well, with your colleagues or with your kids. When you expect people around you to do things that nobody agreed upon, it is not going to work. Yes. Obviously not. And so I invite every listeners to really think of what are the expectations in my life right now that I can turn into an agreement, that I can have a powerful conversation with someone and try to find something that we can both agree on,
Yes.
instead of being frustrated when the other person doesn't do what you expect, but you never said it.
And that's like so true. So like again, like, so we just went through Christmas time, and that was one of the things, is that we were having some conversations with some of my clients, and those were some of the things. It's like, well, but I have all these things that I expected that we were going to be able to do, and it's like, but did you tell anybody what you were looking for? Like if nobody knows, then how are you going to, right? So like, my expectation at Christmas for myself is that, other than a Christmas brunch that we get together with my boys and my husband, and now my mother-in-law, that's the only thing that we have. And so my expectation is to let me know which day is going to work, but I communicate that. Okay, guys, Christmas time is coming up. I need to know what's going on with everybody's plans, because they have other, like their partner's family, and then their dad's family. And like, there's all these other things that are going on. So it's like, okay, so I just need to know which day so that we can put it in the calendar. We know exactly what it is that's going on. But otherwise, but if I don't communicate that, and the boys know that it's now an expectation, so they know that if I don't hear from them, or that they don't hear from me about figuring out a date, then they will actually reach out to me. But otherwise, like, if I don't ask and I don't tell them that this is what I'm looking for, then how are they going to know what's going on in my head? And there's lots going on in my head.
Exactly. The worst is not asking for the thing that you want and then blaming others for not doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I understand there's some basic stuff that people should do, like when you respect or appreciate someone, you do some little things. But in general, turn those expectations into agreements. That's going to solve tons of problem in all relationships.
And
now,
that's, and I love the fact that you actually talk about, like, in all relationships, right? So that includes with your boss, that includes with your family, with your significant other.
Especially in the workplace. I would say that this is, I mean, in your love relationship, this is the one you spend the most time with. But I think the next person you spend the most time with, it's in your workplace, someone there, a colleague or a boss or whatever. You're basically almost every day there. So it's so important to turn all those expectations into agreement. It doesn't take so much time. It just takes a simple conversation, and then everything is clear, right?
Absolutely.
The third distinction I want to give is the difference between your desire and the desire of the other person. Now, I love that book from Gary Chapman, The 5 Love Languages. It's a wonderful book that explains the way that we give love and receive love. And there are different ways. Some people it's act of service, some people it's touch, some people it's a word of affirmation, etc. There's 5 different ways. Now, the problem is, there is this saying that says, treat others the way you want to be treated. This is true, but not so true. It doesn't really work in relationships, because you again put yourself in the center of the universe by saying, I'm going to treat others the way I want to be treated. This doesn't work this way. You have to treat others the way they want to be treated, because the things that I want to receive is not especially the things that other people want to receive. Like, you want to make me happy, get me a survival course in the Amazon. If I'm like, oh, that probably is going to make you happy, I'm going to treat you the way I would like to be treated, I'm going to offer you a survival course in the Amazon, you'll be like, what the hell is that? Right? If we extrapolate that to the way we show love, it's very important. So based on those 5 love languages, you can really define the way you give love to others and the way you like to receive love. I could see that my way of giving love is act of service. The way of my wife to feel love is hugs, it's touch, physical touch, 100%. When we started living together, I was not working at the time. I was not allowed. I was on a dependent visa. We were abroad, and I was doing everything I could in the house to make everything perfect, to do my part of the job, to contribute, right? I was coming from the military, and suddenly I was at home and I could not work. And I was like, whoa, that was a difficult time. Anyway, I was cleaning, I was doing the groceries, I was cooking, I was preparing nice stuff, etc. And when she would come back from work, everything would be ready. And I kept a bit running around to make sure the last details were perfect. And she was like so frustrated because she didn't care about any of that. The only thing she wanted was to have a hug. And I was like so busy making the last adjustment for the dinner. And I was frustrated because I felt I was not appreciated all the hard work I was doing the whole day.
Yeah.
Then we realized we communicate love in a different way. And by having this really deep conversation, we understood that, well, when I'm doing act of service, she sees that it's my way of showing love. But when she wants to receive love, no, instead of expecting a hug or whatever, we agreed upon it. And so what's happening, like, I really need a hug right now. I dropped everything I have. I go to her and I hug. And she's getting everything she needs. And I
Yes.
can share my love the way that she really understand it and receive it. And this is a very important distinction. So for the people around you, I think you can do the test online on their website. It takes 10 minutes and it can gives you a lot of insight. I think for the people around you, you can say, okay, for my mom, for my kids, for my brothers, sisters, friends, you can see what are their love languages and say, hey, next time, this is the way I'm going to show love, so they can receive it better. So
Yes.
don't treat people the way you want to be treated. Treat people the way they want to be treated.
And I love that distinction, because I think that that's really important, that we forget that this is what somebody else needs, right? So during COVID, one of the things that I realized is that, so I'm not a huggy person. So like, I'm okay with you not, like, however, like with my kids and my husband, then that's different. But like on a general basis, like I don't go around hugging people, whereas other people, as soon as you walk in the room, they're like wanting to do the hugs. And so I like that space. I'm not looking for like the double kiss on the cheek when I walk into the room. And so, but that's something that's really important, is that, but during COVID, I had to shift some of the things that I actually would have to say, okay, I'm looking for a hug right now. Can somebody give me a hug? Because like there was none of that connection, that we didn't have that same connection.
Yeah.
So, and so those are the things that were really important for us to be able to talk about, and things did shift with COVID, and how we're able to do things, and having those communications. And so that makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think all of those conversations are really important to build a solid foundation. So just to recap, the first three distinctions I gave you was to remember that you only can contribute to another person's happiness. You're not responsible for it. And don't put the responsibility of anyone to make yourself happy. The second is to turn all those expectations into agreements. And the last one is to really understand how others want to be treated and communicate to others the way you want to be treated. So by working on all of those things, you really start building strong foundations, and it just takes a few conversations.
And again, it's about that communication, like you talked about that at the beginning as well. So with having those communications. No, so one of the things that that in terms of mastering these relationships, you were talking about your book. So do you want to share a little bit more about what about your book, what it is that you have?
Yeah. So I just published a book like 2 weeks ago, and in this book, I don't specifically talk about relationship, but I talk about relationship with yourself, right? This is like the way you go through life, the way you live your life, the way you are taking ownership and responsibility for your day, how you can create yourself every single day. I wrote this book because a few years ago, I miraculously survived an earthquake and a tsunami, and seeing death so close really taught me a lot of things about life. And I realized, whoa, I got a second chance in life, and not everybody will. And so based on that, I'm like, I want to share my message with others to help everyone I know live the best life. And I promised myself that day to live my best life too. And that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of intentionality. And so I wrote this book to give kind of 11 lessons about how not to suck at life.
Nice.
And so this book is available on Amazon. Yeah.
So, and for anybody who's on Facebook and YouTube, I have shared the link. And so what is the name of the book for people who are not accessing this link?
Yeah. So the book is called The Illusion of Time. And the core message is really to stop postponing your best life for later.
So, and I love,
because
obviously there's a, we've got a time delay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I said the core message is really to stop postponing your best life for later, because we tend to live with postponing stuff, like, oh, I'll do that next week, next month, or January. January is the month when we dump all the stuff, what we want to do and get better, etc. We keep postponing all the time things. And by living in this future, we kind of miss out on the only thing that we really have, which is the present. And so we don't know what's going to happen later. Nobody knows. And reality is we all will die and nobody knows when. And when we can own your mortality, you realize, like, I have a very short and limited supply of time. I got to use every second I have, every moment I have, to the best of my abilities. And so that's what I want my book to do to the readers, to make them realize, oh, wow, okay, if I want to live this amazing life that I dreamt of one day, this is the steps I need to take.
And it really is going back to mastering that relationships, which is the topic of this conversation, because it is about having that mastery over your relationship with yourself, right? So
definitely. And so when you can understand yourself better, you can also, it has ripple effect on every person in your life, right? And there is one other point I just briefly want to bring in. This is understanding yourself is something very important. Trying to understand others is also super important into relationship, right? The problem is that we tend to speak more than we listen. And so when we say relationships are all about communication, and usually relationships are not communication issue, they are listening problems. We don't take enough time to actually listen to the person in front of us. And in this world, when we are completely bombarded all the time by all this media trying to fight for attention, we get distracted a lot. But the people in your life deserve the gift of your full attention. And so this principle from Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Efficient People, is about seek to understand before to be understood. This is such a powerful principle. If you can take that away and apply that in all your relationship, you become more compassionate. You become less judgmental. You become just a better person with the people in your life. And you can respond instead of reacting all the time.
And I love that, like when you're talking about like being able to understand from somebody else's perspective, because like even just something as simple as and I know that I annoy my husband to death about this, is we'll be driving around and somebody will do something while we're driving, and he'll be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And it's like, okay, but you, like, maybe there's a kid in the back seat that just got their attention, or maybe maybe something just happened that just, you don't know what it is that's going on. And he's like, oh, of course, looking at the glass half full always, right? So, but it is about being able to look at what it is else that's going on, and not to say that I never get frustrated, because I get frustrated, but at the same time, it's being able to like take a step back, and sometimes it's easier when somebody else puts the mirror up for us to be able to see what it is that is happening, right?
We have to learn to keep our ego in check. I say that I have a big ego, I admit it, but it's really this process of learning to say, hey, I'm gonna truly be there for the person in front of me right now. And I love this sentence: offer the people the gift of your full attention. They deserve it. I think it's very beautiful to take away.
It's an important. Sorry, go ahead.
No, another distinction that I want to give with this one is changing yourself versus changing others. Now, you know how difficult it is to change yourself. I guess you already tried to do it. Everybody tries once in their life to change your diet, to change the way you do sport, or whatever it is. I want to get better. I want to change. If I would ask everyone now to make a list of all the time they said, I should, and did not do it, the list might be long, just saying. So
just a little.
It's really hard enough to change yourself. So forget about trying to change others. It just doesn't work, right? And we keep trying to change the people around us, but it's not gonna lead to success in your relationship. What's important to do is to realize, okay, if I want to change the behavior of the person that I have a relationship with, how can I change myself? What do I need to change in my behavior so it's going to create the right environment for the other person to change? That's the only thing we can really control. And you see, the moment you change yourself, you start having a ripple effect on all the people in your life. Pretty sure if you have kids and you start eating differently, you start taking more care of yourself, and you realize suddenly the kids are getting a little bit curious. They're like, oh, what's happening? What is my mom? What is my dad doing? How did they change? Why did they change? And slowly it generates the curiosity and the desire to also change. Now tell a kid, eat broccoli. I mean, it's difficult. Do it yourself and do it in a different way to make people change. And that's the same at work with your colleagues. You have a colleague that does something you don't like, is not thinking about keeping complaining and blaming them for something, like, how can I change so this does not happen anymore? How can I change so the environment is right for them to grow and change as well? So changing yourself versus changing others.
And that's and because we can't change somebody else, right? Like there's like, we don't have their willpower, like we don't have their will, we don't have their like the ability, like unless we're physically manipulating what it is that they're doing, like, so like unless we're like taking their hand and helping them brush their teeth, like that's the only way that we can make any of those changes. And those are things that are, I love that distinction as well. And so those are really things that are really important in terms of, again, being able to master yourself in terms of the relationship with yourself versus of changing others.
Yeah, there is a really key statement in coaching is that people support what they create. And you can see that for everyone. When you have an idea, you're so much more willing to defend it and to stand for it, etc. So the idea is to, with the people around you, if you really want them to change, try to create whatever you can for them to have the idea to change by themselves, because people support what they create. So this is also something powerful to take away. People support what they create. Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or that you wanted to touch on before we headed out?
Relationships should not be hard, but they should require effort. And I think sometimes nowadays people are too fast quitting on things when hardship is coming. But we need to understand that transformation takes time to transform yourself and also to support other people to change. So we need to really remember that it's all about intentionality, and it takes courage. It takes effort to have a successful marriage. Yeah, it just does not happen like this. Success in all areas of life does not just happen. So it's about building the self-discipline of having this tough conversation regularly, of doing the effort, of being willing to change yourself to really be able to master those relationships. But it is so worth it. So remember, it's not because it's hard that you have to quit, right? It requires effort, and that's normal. Relationships are created every single day. Every day, you create who you are, and you create a relationship with others.
And even strangers, right? So like we create relationships even with strangers, and and you being a world traveler, you run into strangers all the time. Here while I'm in at a motel, like there's been creating those relationships with the people that have been in the building, right? So like it's just all these different ways of being able to do that, and it's really important for us to be able to remember that all of our interactions are relationships, whether they become long lasting relationships or they're just in the moment relationships. They're all relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I would finish with that quote from Neil Donald Walsh, who says, "Every act is an act of self-definition."
Beautiful. I love that. And so thank you again for joining us, and looking forward to reading your book and learning more a little more about those 11 points, and loved this chat. So on that note, we will chat later, and we will be back next week for another weekly interview series, and talk to you guys soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.